Indeed, that was some 12 hours ago. To help us with that question, where are the missing residents? We are joined by Kofi J. He's correspondent with our sister station, Adum TV, for an update on the situation. Kofi, are the residents back? Do we know where they are?
No, a majority of them are still not back yet. And as of yesterday, the military officers detained the whole entire community, especially the women and the children, from the morning to this morning, around 12 a.m. before they released them to their various houses. Those who left. But as I'm speaking to you now, they released them to their various homes. But majority of them are still, those who were detained are still, living the community because they don't know when they'll be arrested again. And the MC for Gassat, the municipal chief executive for Gassat, is having a current meeting with the military hierarchy to find a lasting solution, whether the military officers will still be there or they will leave. But as of this morning, if you go to Obom community, majority of the military officers have left to Accra, leaving about 50 people, 50 military officers in the town.
Kofi, Tuesday dawn, you reported that some persons were rounded up, persons believed to have taken part in that violence or clash leading to the injuring of the military men. Do we know where those persons are?
Those guys have run away. They have run away. Even they left before the arrival of the military officers. So as I'm speaking to now, we learned that some of them have come to Kaswa and others to different locations. So as I'm speaking to now, we don't know where they are now.
You also spoke to a medical officer who is concerned that the situation is affecting health delivery in the area. We are also understanding that some of his workers are affected.
Yes, because initially Boom was not part of the soup, but the military officers, came there and arrested everybody. So the operation started around 1 a.m. So they were all asleep, and majority of the workers are not staying in the hospital bungalows. They stay with the community. So they arrested all of them, but with the help of the assembly, they were able to identify the health workers. But majority of them were traumatized due to the excessive gunshots and the intimidation, and majority of them were tortured and assaulted, because when military officers are in the town and doing so, you can imagine what will happen to them.
Finally, Kofi, we are seeing in our shots some pictures or videos of a burnt vehicle and a motorcycle. Do we know who owns that vehicle and who burnt them?
Yeah, those property belongs to the Mponuahene of Atim Apeja, who in the person of Nana Sapokuma. Those property belongs to him.
And who set them ablaze?
The residents of Obom, Faase, and there are about 30 communities. So they went to the site and said all these properties are ablaze.
And this is over land dispute, we understand. How long has that dispute festered? Do we know?
According to the chief, they have been there for about 200 to 300 years now. But recently, and they had information that Mponuahene of Asima Peja is claiming the ownership of that portion of that. It's about, I think, 500 acres of land. And then Mponuahene was saying that that land belongs to them. So they came there. He came there with the military men to get the land. They wanted to sell the land. So he mobilized the military men and came there. That's the reason why. But they have been there for over 200 years now, but we don't know the reason why the chief is claiming the ownership of that land. But documents available to the assembly indicate that that portion of the land belongs to the eastern part of Ghana, which is the Achangs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Kofi J is a reporter with our sister station, Adum TV. Let's now get some analysis on this. Joining us is Adam Bona. He's a security consultant and chief executive of Security Warehouse Limited. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, we are having a situation where citizens are attacking military persons. This has a semblance to what happened with the late Major Maxwell Mahama. Fortunately, this time the soldiers, though seriously injured, didn't die. But What do you think, or what signal do you think this sends, especially to the military, about their relationship with the citizens?
Well, yes, good morning to your viewers. The signal this sends to the military hierarchy, and I believe that the president, who happens to be the commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, is very simple, that a lot more work needs to be done to improve upon civilian-military relationship. Since the days of the coups, citizens, civilian relationship used to be very bad. But I think in most recently, in recent times, I would say we've seen some amount of improvement. And I'm not sure whether it is the military probably trying to bridge the gap between themselves and the civilians, or the rest of us civilians, that is culminating into some civilians taking the laws into their own hands, and sometimes, if the case of Major Mama, as you raised, killing some officers and brutalizing these particular two officers and other infractions we've seen against the military. I would want to see more collaboration between civilians, CSOs, and the military and the civilians at large, so that the civilians will. The military as an institution is there to protect them, and so at no point should the military be as an enemy to civilians or as an enemy to the ordinary person. Probably this is what might have culminated into these young men, criminals, I will call them criminals, taking the laws into their own hands and not respecting the authority. These officers were wearing military uniform, and even if it was a war situation and you captured them, you have captured them. Simple, let's say they were prisoners of war. The international conventions do not even allow prisoners of war to be brutalized, because you could be on the other side one day. And so for them to have captured them, put it that way, and, dehumanizing them, I'm watching and stripping them almost. A bloody face. I think that is despicable. And I hope that moving on, these things will not be seeing these things as we are seeing now.
Mr. Bona, does this also in any way affect the morale of soldiers? We know the training they go through, the respect they attach to their uniforms even, and the jobs they carry out. I'm looking at military men watching their colleagues treated this way. Recipe for retaliation, recipe for disaster?
Well, it is, I think, all of it. Recipe for retaliation, but if you know the way the military are trained, they are supposed to be gentlemen. They are supposed to be gentlemen. They have guns, and so I'm sure there's a very good reasons why they did not literally shoot into the public. Because of their training, they could have probably attempted to shoot. And if you know how Major Mama died, unfortunately, he had a sidearm, but there is no indication he killed anybody before he died. It tells you how rigorous our military officers are trained, to a very large extent. And so, yes, sometimes when these things happen, I would have wished that when it happens, the whole place becomes a crime scene. The military should not usually be deployed into the place. Get the police to go in, because they are, they have prosecutorial powers. They have what it takes to gather all the evidence, arrest the right people, and ensure that the right people are put before court and punished if the evidence is available. But when it happens this way, officers go into town, stand into the town, and bundle people together. Usually, those who commit these types of crimes are the strongest among the people. They tend to run away first, knowing very well they are, low in committing that particular act of criminality or barbarity. And so as far as I am concerned, I would have wished that it would have been moving in there, making sure the police takes over, arrest who needs to be arrested. If the police cannot handle it, then you are going to have a joint military police or police military operations where, you know, they do this together. But where you have the military, you know, swarming the town, going into the town and literally putting the town into a lockdown mode, for me, it is something that sometimes further deepens the relationship between the military and civilians. And so I have spoken to officers and they feel pained. Some of them feel that this is not what they expect from the people they are supposed to be protecting. But these things didn't start today. Military officers performing civilian duties have been with us probably after 1957, where military officers are deployed. But our own laws do not permit these things for military officers to be deployed into civilian areas without a reason.
Okay.
And so I would hope that once we have these conversations moving on, gradually, I know the current defense ministry seems to be, withdrawing officers from civilian populated areas. If you know Operation Vanguard, they've withdrawn almost all the military officers. It was put in the public. So these are some of the things some of us want to see, so that the military officers are returned to the barracks to be performing military duties only.
Okay, Mr. Bonner, but the military were said to be engaging in land guardism. We understand that they were protecting a parcel of land that has some dispute over ownership. Is that the normal mission of the military? Are they allowed to be involved in such activities?
Not at all, under no circumstances. If it's a military land, you expect the military to protect their turf. But if it is a civilian, land, i.e. some chiefs or communities fighting over a land, or if by executive instrument, the President of the Republic decides to take that dumb Faase area, the whole community, and says everybody should move, and they are proving too recalcitrant, they don't want to move, the President of the Republic, through an executive instrument, could say, could declare a state of emergency around the area and send the military in to push everybody out. And that is backed by law. But in this type of operations, and one of the military officers who was brutalized, spoke to the media, and we know that those of us who are in this space knows this is not what military officers are trained to do. I think he spoke too much by giving out information about his field. The commanding officer. Some commanding officers are reckless. Let me put it, that way, are reckless. As a commanding officer, you have a small number, a large number of, officers, other ranks under you, and you use them for, who come under you for operations. And so sometimes at the blind side of the CDS and probably government or the Ministry of Defense, some of these commanding officers deploy some of these people who comes under them to perform some of these functions. And so mine is that I would want to believe that proper investigations will be put in place so that at the end of the day, whoever this commanding officer's name is will be brought to book, because as far as I'm concerned, this doesn't look like a sanctioned military operations, because military officers are not supposed to be protecting land, especially that don't belong to them.
Okay.
But the president has not said, by executive instrument, he wants to take over. And so these issues need to be investigated.
Okay. Finally, Mr. Bonner, so what can be done to deal with the possibility of this, affecting the morale of the soldiers? You just mentioned that the officer shouldn't have spoken so much. Probably he did out of fear for his life, considering what happened to his colleague some 3 years ago. So what should we be doing? We've spoken about dealing with the civilian-military relationship, but within the ranks of the military itself, I'm sure this must be very disappointing to them. How do we make sure it doesn't affect morale and the professionalism of soldiers?
Well, I believe that CDS, one of the, probably the longest serving military officer currently, he knows what to do. He needs to gather his men. They are trained to deal with these type of situations. And so I do believe that if any military officer who is well trained will see this to be one of the situations that they've been trained to deal with, that sometimes the people you are trained, the people you are there to protect could turn against you. I mean, we saw that in Iraq, where Iraqis turned against the Americans and saw the Americans as, the enemy. And so as far as I'm concerned, a lot of conversation must go on, a lot of, reorientation of our military officers within the barracks and letting them know that, you see, they are there to protect us, but sometimes there could be excesses. And so as far as I'm concerned, I want to believe that going into 2020, we need a joint military task force to deal with, excesses with regards to the election. So I want to see the military going in and probably the military aiding the police and the other security agencies, not having a certain mentality that if the civilians misbehave, they are going to deal with them. Because at the end of the day, you cannot be a military officer if you are not a Ghanaian. If you are not a full-blooded Ghanaian, you can't be a military officer. And so mine is that this issue should be dealt with diligently, because going into 2020, if we leave this thing and believe that it's going to just die off, we'll go into 2020 and just a little thing, you see a military officer probably brutalizing a civilian, which could still a lot of damage to what we are expecting to see during the elections.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. Adam Bona is CEO of Security Warehouse Limited, and he's been sharing his thoughts about that incident which occurred some 72 hours ago.